I am Mark Breitenberg, the Provost of CCA, and it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you to tonight's Graduate Series lecture at CCA, tonight in partnership with Bethany Center Senior Housing. And I'd especially like to welcome Jerry Brown, Director of Bethany, and all of the guests you brought here to CCA tonight. You know, this past spring, a few weeks ago, CCA began a new initiative, a very profoundly important one, called Engage at CCA. And this is an initiative that creates partnerships between our students and community organizations around the Bay Area. These projects are embedded in the students' curriculum so that as they learn the skills of artists, designers, architects, and writers, they are also having an educational experience that has a real impact on the world. CCA becomes a college without walls, and our students have the opportunity to transform the culture around them through their education. I really think this is part of CCA's DNA. It's very much who we are. And under the leadership of Sanjit Sethi, who's here, we have launched 10 Engage at CCA projects this spring. I'd just like to mention a few of them for you. Ceramics students will be designing protective nesting modules for a species of endangered birds on Ano Nuevo Island. CCA writing students will teach high school students in the mission to write their personal stories, this in collaboration with 826 Valencia. Furniture design students at CCA will create furniture for the Lighthouse Charter School. Sculpture students are working at SF MoMA, and industrial design students are working with Bethany Center to design services, products, and experiences for the residents of this remarkable senior living center. And that brings us to our speaker tonight. Very often, these kinds of projects, because they take on more ambitious goals than a typical art or design project, require external expertise. They require someone to come in to add a level of depth in the field that the students are working in. Patricia Moore is an internationally renowned designer, gerontologist, author, and lecturer. She's a leading proponent, and I've even heard some say the inventor of inclusive design, in which we design for every age, ability, and walk of life. She has a sterling list of clients in her professional career: AT&T, Boeing, Citibank, Johnson & Johnson, NASA, Pfizer, the City of Seoul, and many, many others. Her current project is perhaps one of the most remarkable, and I think we'll hear something about it tonight. It's certainly one of the most challenging, I'm sure. She is working with the Veterans Administration on a project to design medical centers for holistic rehabilitation for head injuries, amputations, in order to restore these folks' quality of life. It's a really remarkable project. Patty has industrial design and graphic design degrees from Rochester Institute of Technology. She has a degree from NYU Medical School, and from Columbia, a degree in social, psychological counseling, and gerontology. Her book, Disguised, chronicles her experience for 3 years, disguised as an 80-year-old woman through Canada and the United States, her body altered to live and experience the world as an 80-year-old woman. This is, without a doubt, to my mind, the most unequaled and profound experience of empathic research I've ever heard of. And I think you'll also hear a little bit tonight. Patty's honors go on and on. She was named one of the 40 most socially conscious designers in the world by ID Magazine, among the 100 most important women in America by a consortium of news editors, and among the 50 Americans defining the new millennium by ABC World News. It is my great pleasure to introduce my friend and my favorite design diva, Patricia Moore. Thank you.
It's true, I make him pay for dinner. Good evening, and thank you so much for coming out. I understand it's getting a little messy out there, and I don't know if we should start with "Oh, Canada." I'm glad that we can all see some reruns of what we might be missing with the opening ceremonies, and yes, I am an Olympics junkie, so I'll be catching up with you as well later. It is my great honor to be considered traveling faculty here at CCA. I'm trying to remember the first time that I lectured here. My dear friend and colleague Stephen Holt has brought me in on many occasions. I've had a great number of wonderful experiences and projects with the students here and the faculty as well. For me, teaching has become something that is less about a particular university, and as Mark described so beautifully, I think this university without walls is certainly something that is essential to quality of life and the best outcomes by design. What we have initiated here at Bethany Center is certainly something that will become the standard bearer for senior care. Whenever I'm with an audience and I ask for a show of hands, how many want to give up the nest of their choice and go live someplace where someone tells you what to do and how to do it for the rest of your days? They ask me where the cement block is and the nearest river. And I say that most seriously. None of us wants to have end of life be an unpleasant experience. And sadly, so many of the opportunities for elders in terms of health and housing are less than exemplar. So what Bethany Center has achieved, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you is quite unique and remarkable and should be something that is replicated throughout the nation. When I was 85, I was actually 26, and I am not medicated, nor am I drunk. The experience I had was to, as a woman in her late 20s, a designer at Raymond Loewy's office in New York City, the experience I had was to walk in someone else's shoes, to experience with prosthetics what it was like to be much older. On a good day, I felt 85. I was able to experience every facet of daily life, from taking every form of transportation, including a hydrofoil, to eating in restaurants, going to theater, making purchases in every retail establishment in 116 cities throughout North America. In character, I found friendship and love. I went to far too many funerals, saying goodbye to friends I had made as an elder. I had, bless you, I had little children take very good care of me like their granny. I had little ones who saw the snow on the rooftop and immediately identify with love and acceptance. And I had little ones who saw me as some sort of object to hurt. I had stones first tossed to me in Florida by little boys who were giggling and pelting me with these rocks, thinking it was fun, just as if I was a tin can on a fence. And then, sadly, one day, there was the sound of sneakered feet, and a gang of young boys, I don't think more than 12 years of age, from the sound of their voices, set upon me, beat me, and left me bloodied on the streets of Harlem, where I was rescued by a taxi driver I never got to face and thank. So I always like to when it comes up. I would not be here tonight if he hadn't found me and brought me to a hospital, and if I had not received the care that I did. But imagine how the doctors responding to me must have felt as they removed my clothing. She doesn't look like any actress I know. Do you know her? Have you seen this face before? Who is this woman? Imagine. So yes, there was some fun too. And admittedly, that was not one of those moments, but I'm glad we laughed because I prefer we do. I remember the horror of that experience, and I wouldn't take it away for a moment because it allowed me to speak on behalf of so many elder abuse victims and to work with the FBI and the International Chiefs of Police on all of the issues that relate to harming our elders worldwide. But more than that, it gave me an awareness of how it felt to be victimized, more so than I ever could have felt as a young woman who had also been mugged. And my apartment has been robbed 3 times in New York, and that's life. But when it happens to you at this fragile stage, when being pushed to the pavement means breaking a hip and spending the rest of your days using a wheeled conveyance, when your independence and autonomy are affected by such hateful, hurtful actions of others, it makes us wonder, what's happening? What's happening in our world, and why would young babies be able to do such a thing? I still don't know the answer. This happened to me in 1979, and today I live with the pain of the injuries. And as I was first married and attempted to bear a child, found that I couldn't due to those injuries. But I wouldn't change a thing. I'm grateful for the experience, the worst of experiences I had in character. And I'm humbled by them, and I'm delighted by them, and I smile from them, and I cry happy tears and sad tears as well. Okay, I've been through the 12-step program, and I can admit to you here tonight fully, I had more dates in character than I did at 26, okay? It's out there. Take it away, TMZ, I don't give a rat's patootie. It's true. I had a fabulous time. I met lovely, lovely guys who treated a woman right. And that's a challenge to all of you young bucks. I can tell you that I left this experience knowing full well that there isn't an industry represented today on the planet that couldn't benefit from more empathy and understanding of all people as equal. When we completed this research in 1982, I was approached by a major multinational that asked us to continue the research by talking with 5,000 Americans representing all 50 states. And the first piece, they had to have celebrated their 65th year. 2 years ago now, we concluded that research. I had a very sweet, innocent reporter ask me recently why we stopped. I reminded her to do the math. As the majority of the participants in this study got their wings, we no longer had 5,000 stories and 5,000 voices. But in the years that we spent with them, we learned so very much about everyday living, the tools that are required, the things that are necessary, how design had failed and where design needed to go. Throughout this great land of ours and literally all over the world, each and every one of us is first and foremost a consumer. And that is, quite frankly, where we have not been able to embrace graceful aging. There still is, throughout all industry, a propensity to say at a certain age someone is no longer of interest to us in terms of their being a consumer. And I think that we discovered what the issue might be. It's not the age factor. You can't design for and to an age. All design needs to be about ability. If we focus on ability as the key variable that we approach in all of our work, I think we do our best work. I know even in my background, there might have been a little voice in me saying, "Grandpa, get off that sled. Are you trying to kill yourself?" And why would we do such a thing? Because we're fearful for Grandpa. We don't want him to be hurt. We know in our heart of hearts, this experience in that sled were not designed for him. Why not? What we should be doing is encouraging any activity, any level of ability, and meeting any capacity by design. And we need to focus on this agenda for the entirety of the lifespan. So we have to fight what has been the norm, looking at certain age segments and completely redefine our agenda to start from day none, day one. For the entirety of this lifespan, we each of us need a nest, and we all of us can think about our favorite place we've lived or we've yet to live, the ideal circumstance, what thrills us, what meets our desires and our dreams, our basic needs. No two of us are alike in this regard, I will offer, just like snowflakes, all of us quite unique in what it is we desire. In this search for quality in all of our days, we are as individual as possible, and yet we're all the same. Try and sell that to a CEO who now is beating his head against the table asking what you're talking about. How is it that he can possibly design for everybody and anybody, and especially these two? I met these girls in Italy. I love these girls. They drink. They are sassy. They have attitude. They are a lot of fun. Take a moment with me and examine what we see. In approaching them after they saw me taking the shot, and they were not happy about it, I apologized. I addressed them in Italian, so they calmed down a bit, but I did hear the disparaging things they said about me before I got to their side. And after we calmed down, I asked them if we could chat, and we did. I asked the sister holding the landfill shopping bag how it was that she didn't need a cane like her elder sister. And of course her response was something like, oh, how shall we say this in English? I don't need no stinking cane. And she was very proud of this. But again, look closely. She's got a cane. We call it the cane sister, exactly. Isn't it remarkable? Two very similar women. One is petrified at the thought of admitting that she needs a tool, a device, a piece of extended fashion that allows her to go throughout the course of her day. What happens when her cane sister is no longer by her side? The adjustment to growing older, to developing chronic issues and physical needs, the fear that's embodied in all of us at being viewed as somehow less desirable, less worthy, less willing, less able, is what sadly has created such an ageist attitude in our culture. Needless to say, the cane sister was quite proud of the fact that she uses a cane and uses it for many things, including evidently striking people who irritate her. Somehow I missed the beating. But she was quite proud when I pointed out that her lousy sister is the landfill sister, and she was very proud of her reusable, sustainable shopping bag. Of course, they clearly shop at the same stores, and I call them the chameleon sisters. We could find them in a snowstorm. Okay, here's the big message. Thanks to the ADA, so many people thought what architecture and design was talking about was mere accessibility. That's just the tip of that iceberg. What we do is we try to salvage the marriage of this gentleman when his wife sees this image and knows that he took this innocent child into the New York subway system. As of course he is not supposed to do, but the baby seems unscathed unless it's passed out. I think it's sleeping. He looks like he's about to have a stroke. But when we got the picture, what we realized we were seeing was something more important. Notice the ever so important New York man in the short, dark sports shirt. He has just hammered a tourist with his shoulder. And you can see the tourist gratefully was able to grab hold of the post at the subway station to steady himself before falling into the bicycles that are chained. He probably would have been terribly hurt. By the way, how do we know it's a tourist? Aren't you good? I am in San Francisco, after all. Yes, Scandinavian probably, socks and sandals. And this is not to be disparaging. This is a very utilitarian outfit. You do not want to know about the germophobia and flip-flops. So this lovely guy managed to hang on tight for all he was worth, while ever so important New York man could give a hoot that it is his world and this guy's just visiting. This is one way to describe accessibility. How well are we able to get through the course of each day? How well does the environment service us and our needs? And what about all of those things, all of those variables, all of those tools that each of us must use as best we can? This usability, therefore, becomes the feature of design that we must focus on most devotedly. Consumers tell us all the time when we've got it wrong. When I first saw this couple in Central Park with this ratty umbrella, I just had to find out. And yes, they dug it out of the trash because she was feeling a little too warm in the sun. But why is it we don't have wheeled conveyances with surreys and fringe, I wonder? And why don't they come in every color under the rainbow? We're working on it. The inspiration comes from watching and viewing and learning and being very careful to design beyond our own personal agenda. But let me share some prejudices I have, and this is number one. None of us is disabled. But we, of course, are very good at disabling others. The built environment, the failure of design disables. But no one of us could be called a disabled person. It is our poor design, our lack of sympathy, sensitivity, and empathy, an attitude that says, well, I can do it. If they can't, too bad. I saw this lovely woman in the ancient capital of Nara, Japan. Her daughter delivered her at the base of these 100 steps leading to the temple where she takes her daily prayer. And I watched with tears in my eyes at the elegance of her movements. First, the umbrella tip on the step, and then a foot, and then the next foot. And she steadied. The umbrella tip, foot, foot, steady. Watching her do this until she had completed this climb, and then having the opportunity to speak to her daughter and ask, even though I was fairly certain of the answer, why did her mother not take the pathway? There was another route to the temple. And she smiled and said, this is what she's always done. That's the design agenda of our time. Making sure that as much as possible, people can have the normalcy in their lives by giving them the proper tools, the best design, and making sure that dignity is defined by design. So, to get here, I would offer that we have to turn around this medical model of aging. We gave up authority over lifespan design a long time ago when we decided that at a certain age we became a diagnostic and no longer a consumer. Consumers are telling us that they want to have the home of their choice, a nest that they love, and they want the means by which to maintain themselves with those choices. Home health care is the delivery mechanism that all of us hopefully will have, and very soon. If the baby boom cohort fails to embrace this agenda, we have damned our children and grandchildren because the payment structure will be crippling. Creating this consumer model is something that has been quite challenging. And interestingly, we began it within the medical domain. This is an acute care hospital rehab center, but it's a microcosm of everyday living with every aspect of daily life represented with products and features within the environment of care. And in this setting, this very holistic setting, families participate with individuals who are recuperating from illness and injury. We don't have patients, we have people regaining their autonomy and independence by rehearsing what they need to do with a changed physicality or mental status. Mark mentioned what we're doing with the VA. It seems with every war, we redefine our inhumanity. The injuries I have seen at Walter Reed is the stuff of nightmares. Beautiful young men and women who have come home to us without a face, without limbs, badly burned, head injured. But they deserve and they are due a life, and that life will come to them by design. It's not just about prosthesis, it's about an attitude where all corporations are stepping forward and offering products and trainings as a beta center so that each individual can find their own unique way. I had a young Marine tell me that he didn't understand how he could possibly live independently, considering he had no arms and legs. I listened as he fought back tears and said, "Ma'am, what am I going to do? Look at me. Everything's wrong." And I assured him that I didn't give a rat's ass about what was wrong with him. And he laughed and he smiled. And I said, "Sweetheart, let me tell you a secret. A good designer does not design to what's wrong with you. A good designer designs to what's right with you. And we're going to make it right." And I mean it. What I find appalling is to think that our tax dollars aren't going to rebuilding these lives, and so I ask you to be good citizens and keep an eye on this. Don't let anyone tell you we don't have the budget to care for these brave hearts and souls who are coming home to us so terribly broken. They deserve a quality of life that each of us would dream about, and they're going to get it by design. There's a formula for success I leave with you, and I hope you use it. It speaks to the fact that there are primary purchasers, the people who make choices, and the people who pay. But perhaps more important is the primary user. And that person might be someone who can't avail themselves of information, needs to have someone who cares and loves them make choices, or make the purchase itself. It's interesting to me when a baby is due in a family, we're all so excited. We're preparing the room, we're buying gifts, we're so thrilled at the thought of this new life, and we pour so much energy and love into that offering. How is it that we don't have the same enthusiasm at life's end for someone who needs us just as much and needs just as much care and consideration? That's the design challenge. The coin of this commerce has two sides, as they all do, and one is choice. If you don't have choice in this life, what's the point? Now, I stopped walking when I saw this, and I had to ask the question, "Sir, is this your bike?" He smiled broadly and proudly said, "You bet. Oh, Lord." Picturing this fellow driving around the mean streets of New York in this machine was more than I could stand. But I did realize he was laughing, and he said, "I bought it. It's for my grandson, graduation present. His father said he couldn't have it." Disney figured this out a long time ago. You don't sell to the nasty parents, they're all broke. You sell to grandma and grandpa. They're the ones that can still afford to go to the theme parks. You make them comfortable and happy, and the rest will come. It's very smart to provide for choice. If you don't have choice, it's not a lot of fun. But without choice, you have no control. And if you don't have control in life, the game is over. On one hand, it was quite a sad day to visit the first skilled nursing center in Japan. It's in Tokyo. I say it was sad because it marked the end of an era where the westernization of the world has changed the way we've cared for each other, where children always looked after their elders and no longer have that capacity because they're off into the big cities for the jobs, where the fee structure has changed like it has everywhere else, where we're very much the same people, whatever country we're living in. But what's so unique about the circumstance in Japan is the humanity of the standards. This woman is allowed to sleep, as she always has, on her mat. Not on the floor, on her mat. And that Hill-Rom bed in the back, while nice and certainly part of a medical response, is not her choice. I can't do this in the United States. I'd like to, but as yet not in skilled care or acute care. But this is what we should be hoping for and working for and designing for, this level of choice and control. Aging in place is something that interior design has been driving for quite a while, but it belongs to all of us. Design, engineering, technology, politics, CFOs, COOs, CEOs, all of us should be aware that each of us simply wants that control and choice for all of our years. If we're not given the tools by which to accomplish this lofty goal, we're not going to be able to do it. Now, I was in a taxi, so I didn't get a chance to interview, but I want to know what's going on. Did they meet on Match.com? Did he say, "I'll pick you up at 7"? What did her face look like when she opened the door? Where are his hands? Who is driving this thing? She doesn't look happy. Does their apartment only allow room for one scooter in the elevator? Were they too poor for two? Or are they just loving life and having a blast, making us wonder? I hope it's the last. We don't have to do anything in this life alone, and the relationships we can rely on have been with us since day one. Perhaps the most important, parent-child. Oops, sorry. Looking after mommy is something I love to do. But what happens when mommy doesn't have someone to look after her? Like I won't. My nieces and nephews are going to be busy. I'm probably going to have a robot. I hope it's nicer than Rosie. If you don't understand that one, I'll explain it to you later. Go to TV Land and look for George Jetson. Grandparenting is precisely that. The magic between putting together children with elders gives us so many responses and answers that we all need. Skilled care is always going to be part of this mix, and thank goodness for the people who manage in this realm. Since we've been keeping the statistics, we have found that anywhere from 6 to 15% of us are at some point in time going to need skilled nursing care. Where, as a gerontologist, I am alarmed is when people in this great nation have no means left by which to manage their lives because of the costs. So here too, our role is as good citizens, never leaving anyone behind. We all of us need this toolkit and these tools for living, but let's not order from the Marquis de Sade. Let's make all personal fit fashion. Let's look for embraceable technologies. If you thought a stethoscope was cold, Imagine this. So let's keep working towards that day where the machines look a bit more like you and me. And we continually have to add new agenda, and the bariatric nation, the bariatric world, is one that deserves the same dignity. Size matters. Make it fit. We've also been spending a great deal of time with personal transit and looking how each of us moves about our communities. And we know what doesn't work and when it doesn't feel good, the center seat and coach. So what we have to address are solutions for personal transit and mass transit that work for the lifespan. I can assure you, I would not try to take a taxi away from this woman to save my life. Clearly, she would hurt us. I love the sensible shoes, the well-used Saks bag, and look at her briefcase. This girl is good to go. When we speak about flexible environments, we're looking at the fact that each of us as a dynamic creature needs these tools to fit the function of the day. I have yet to meet an older woman who is not smart enough to find the only bench in the park and able to tell the man in her life to go get the tickets. These are good girls. After our latest bout of economic woe, people ask the question about snowbirds and second homes. Well, multiple homes are here to stay, and the snowbirds are still in Arizona. I can attest to that. The freeways are packed. When I got to chat with this darling guy, he was going into the wedding of his great-great-granddaughter. He was dancing a jig on the ice and snow just to irritate me. And at 97, you can see he's a lot of fun at parties. Travel is something that continues to be part of all of our dreams and desires. And whether it's going to be virtual or something we truly experience, we have to be more mindful of the fact that people of all abilities love to experience new places. In the realm of the message, how the media speaks to us has never been more key. Now, on Super Bowl Sunday, I had a lot of calls asking, was it okay to laugh at the Betty White commercial? Yes. If a celebrity is playing a role in a commercial, it is quite probably reasonably funny. But here's the test. If you're not sure what you're watching is ageist, remove the elder character and put in a younger character. If the joke still exists, if it's still funny, then it's probably okay. But it's a very fine line. And just as we have been insensitive in race and religiosity and gender, this last domain of ageism in the media is something that still has to be fixed. But you may laugh at Betty White being tackled and thrown into a mud puddle. Don't you want to party with her? I mean, bless her. What we're always looking for are opportunities for education and edification and change that supports quality of life. And I don't know about your household, but I'll make this personal. For me to tell Daddy what he can and cannot eat is not a good thing. He will tell me where I can go with my medical degree and all the rest of it. He does not care because he's my father, and he'll tell me what to do. But miracle of miracles, when my nephews approach him, he does exactly as they say. There's the magic. When a grandchild asks something of a grandparent, it's not threatening. So when this little girl is encouraging Grandpa to eat right so they can play tennis, it's a delight, not a demand. Education is something of a bit of a renaissance, and at campuses all over the country, we are seeing more and more older students come back to us to finish degrees or come to us for the first time, where they are lodging significant complaint with due cause is that facilities weren't necessarily designed for them. So we have our work to do here too. And now, of course, that the baby boomers can't afford to retire, we're looking at employment demands as never before in the environment of work. And this is a very exciting piece for furniture design and lighting design and technology, just looking at how the older worker is not going to merely exist, but thrive. At the end of the day, you want to have some fun. I'm not one to judge, and I'm not going to ask what that person on the end of the aisle is doing in that getup. We are, ladies and gentlemen, one family. It does take a village. We are, after all, an extended family, each of us with wishes and dreams and desires. We are a team. We're here together. We're in this for each other, not just for ourselves. And if ever there has been a time for design to take charge, the time is now. I leave you tonight with a poem that came to me in a letter from a nurse in England. This is one of those pieces that a lot of places have claimed. But to the best of our belief, we think that this story is true. This letter was supposedly found in the belongings of a woman who was living in skilled care in England, and her nurses found it after her death. Imagine them as they read. What do you see? What do you see, nurses? What do you see? Are you thinking when you look at me, just another crabby old woman, not very wise, with faraway eyes, who dribbles her food and makes no reply when you say in a loud voice, I do wish you'd try, who seems not to notice the things that you do and is forever losing a stocking or her shoe, who unresisting or not, lets you do as you will with bathing and feeding this long, long day to fill. Is that what you're thinking? Is that really what you see? Well, then please open your eyes, because you're not looking at me. I'll tell you who I am as I sit here so still, as I do at your bidding, as I eat at your will. I'm a child of 10. I have a father and a mother and brothers and sisters, and we love one another. I'm a girl of 16, and wings on my feet, I'm dreaming that soon now my lover I'll meet. A bride at 20, my heart gives a leap, remembering the vows I promised to keep. At 25, I have young of my own, and they need me to build a secure and happy home. A woman of 30, my young now grow so fast, bound to each other with ties that should last. And at 40, my young sons are grown and are gone, but my man's beside me to see I don't mourn. At 50, once more babies play at my knee, and again we know children, my loved one and me. Dark days are upon me. My husband is dead. I look to the future. I shudder with dread. For my young ones are all rearing young of their own, and I think of the years and the love that I've known. They call me an old woman now, and nature, it seems, can be cruel. 'Tis often her jest to make this age look the fool. A body crumbles, grace and vigor depart, and now it feels as if there's a stone where once I know I had a heart. But inside this so-called old carcass, a girl still dwells. And now and again, even my battered heart swells and I think of the years, all too few gone by too fast, and I accept the stark fact that nothing does last. So open your eyes, open and see, please. Not a crabby old woman. Look closer, you'll see me. Thank you. Mark?
So we have some time for some questions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can we put the house lights on?
Wake up.
There we go.
Ah, let there be light.
I think if you speak up, we'll all be able to hear the question. Please.
Yes, I'm an architect involved in senior housing, and wondered what kind of specific critique and suggestions you might make for the nature of architecture and what's being done right now.
Well, you know, when probably when you and I both got started, there were just some insane, inane rules. You weren't allowed to bring your own belongings into residential care. Maybe you were allowed a photo or two. You weren't allowed to have your favorite chair or, heaven forbid, your own bed. Maybe the comforter that you liked so much, or your own pillows, because there are rules. So we're slowly relaxing all of that, and I think what we're talking to there is the agenda of personalization, making it as much my home as it is their home. And clearly, as in the case in Bethany Center, that's the success, when you can, in fact, create an entity that is that town, that village, where people are just new family living under the same roof, where they don't feel that their control has been lost, that they have choice. And I think, of course, that's a very difficult thing, but it's something that we all of us have to strive for, work towards. We all have the same issues with cost containments and pricing and the rest. But I think you know you've done something right when there's a waiting list. And the best places around the world are those places you can't get into. So those are the ones that I always encourage other architects and designers to take a look and just maybe copy, because somebody's got it right. I think the message to us as well is that there is no recipe for success. We can't have a cookie cutter approach to any of this. Something that works in Georgia might not work in New York City, and something that works in Moscow might not work in LA. And so we have to be very mindful and really approach things from the distinction of understanding where we're at and who we're for and what it's all about. It's when you see a design team come in and tell the client what they need that things go terribly wrong. We just had a terrible failure in South Phoenix where a group built residential housing for what was primarily a Mexican population of people that they just thought were going to gather in and sign up, and they had no idea that the people that were living in South Phoenix had mom or dad in their homes, and that's where they were going to stay. And I think they said that it's now ASU housing. We needed it, so it's okay. Thank you. Someone else?
Yes. I sort of want to make a comment in my mind with, you know, the baby boomers and the sort of shift in demographics. I think that at one point senior housing will disappear. It will just be signed for aging as part of daily life. Mm-hmm. So universal design will, you know, in the long run will become the standard for design.
Well, universality in all things, of course, should be a common thread. I'm a little perplexed that over the years after we started universality in design, people seem to think it was either that or some other kind of design, instead of seeing that all design should have universal features. But that being said, We're always going to have need for specific housing, group housing, for example, people with Alzheimer's and people with certain physical concerns, or even people with certain economic concerns are going to probably always need some kind of congregate care. And I think that's our signal to make sure it's very good congregate care and something we'd be happy to check into as if checking into a hotel. One of my favorite professors at Columbia, when you'd ask her where she expected she'd end up life, she said the plaza. She rather liked their room service, and the people watching was fine. And so, we each have our own vision of what the plaza is. And we had an exercise with the students earlier, Jerry, didn't we, that went very well, I think. How many of our students are here from earlier today? Oh, be brave, show your hands. Okay, this is 15 minutes of fame. Okay, put them down. They were asked to think, what would be part of my domicile? If I could just have one room, what would it be in? What would be in it, and what would it be made of? And we had a very wide variety of choices. I don't think anyone said the same thing except for the people who wanted to make sure their roommate was a dog. So this, of course, is something that gives fits to a lot of administrations in the States, is the presence of pets. It's a difficult thing, but it's a doable thing. So dream on, and then make designers do their job. Anyone else? Yes?
We are working for a client, or like in our case, we're in classes with doing like assignments. How do you make it and them realize how important it is to be designing for not just like one type of person? Like, how do you?
Yeah, well, helping clients envision what they could be doing and maybe what they should be doing if they're not currently doing it sometimes takes some experiential tests and things. I love putting medical students in hospital gowns and putting them in beds and then handing them the little button and not answering it. It's fascinating how humbling that experience is. And they seem to treat nurses better after that, too. It's remarkable. It's a miracle. But I think empathy is what we're talking about, and that's key. It's when someone really understands and uses their product. I'm also very amazed to find people produce things they don't use. That's a little frightening. But if someone is made to experience firsthand a circumstance, that makes a big difference. And it causes a conversion that makes people embrace new opportunities. And that's what we do by design. We're storytellers first and foremost. We paint pictures. We encourage, we entice, we educate, we edify. And if that fails, we get a big brick. No violence. But in your mind. I beat people constantly in my mind. And I feel better and my blood pressure's fine. Anyone else? Yes.
Inspired you originally to go undercover?
Oh, thank you for that. My crazy Irish grandmother, Margaret Mary Moore, lived with us, and my mother's dad, Philip. So being in a household with your grandparents, I think, allows a child to see things that otherwise they wouldn't have seen, experienced, known. I remember that moment when Grandma was making Sunday supper, and that was the one day of the week we were always so tickled because Mommy's a lousy cook. But it's true. And she's still alive, and I love her, but she can't cook. She doesn't like to, so she doesn't. But Grandma loved cooking, so you'd go to church, and she'd come home and start this fantastic feast. And we were her little helpers. Mostly we were underfoot, and so she'd pretend that we were doing helpful things. She'd give us idiotic chores. But I remember one day when she reached for the refrigerator door handle, and there was this squeak, almost mouse-like, very high-pitched, and I was taken aback because I was busy sorting beans into piles of 10. And it's true. She didn't trust us with knives. And I remember being frightened at the sound of this noise. And then I watched as she took her hand and tucked it under her opposite arm and just wandered down the hall. And I ran for Mother and told her something was wrong with Grandma. And Mommy went into Grandma's room, and I could hear soft talking and crying. And then my mother came out and put on the apron, and I wept. Of course, seriously, it wasn't until much later that I realized what I witnessed that day was my grandmother's beginning of the end. Her arthritis got so bad, the things she enjoyed most, she could no longer do. The tools that surrounded her were not prosthetic and reaching out and embracing her and her individual needs. They were causing her harm, and eventually she gave up too. I know enough about the people I've seen pass that some of us do, in fact, just stop because there's no quality, there's no choice, there's no control. That is my inspiration. Having had that love and that experience and not wanting to see it happen to anybody else. Yes?
I'm sorry I came late, so if you covered this, I do apologize if you have already. Have you noticed in your studies that a particular country may be a little bit more progressive in its design of housing for seniors, or in its social programs, or perhaps in its medicine, or which ones and all those?
The exemplars we've seen in health and housing are Scandinavian. They continue to be. Every other nation around the world is playing catch up. No, because I see multiple faces in the audience, and I will be the diplomat and say Scandinavian. Inclusive models. So you can be in a housing complex where we're in one apartment, and next to us might be a woman in her 80s who's widowed, and next to her might be 2 young college students, and next to her might be a single mother with a baby. So there's been no demarcation according to what your age is, and there's been this lovely, lively mixture. I'm quite concerned about gray ghettos. I'm concerned about any kind of ghetto, quite frankly. I can understand purpose if, in fact, as I said, it's congregate care at its core. But I really think that we need the diversity. We need experientially to be thrilled and delighted and even irritated by the sound of the music coming from the flat next door once in a while, not often. But that diversity is what keeps us alive and inquisitive and happy. If you don't have something to complain about, what's the point? But that's very important, and that's what they've managed to do. And there's a deference, and there's a deliberate design. I remember the first time going on a tram and seeing how there was a place for the baby carriages, and everybody knew that that's what that was for, and seats were just, needless to say, given to the people who need them the most, instead of making you feel threatened to ask the kid on the subway if he wouldn't mind if you sat down because you were about to give birth. You know, so there's a sensibility that we lack. Yes?
There is a co-housing model here in certainly California, but probably in the States, where what you're describing, a range of different kinds of people meet in planning, and then eventually end up building and designing and building a community. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very sensible model, isn't it? It's sort of like Noah invited us all to, get on the ark. I can't imagine a party where everyone isn't represented, and unfortunately, a lot of businesses do that quite well. So if we haven't, with all due diligence, looked at every opportunity to serve every single soul, then something's wrong with the mix. And it does take a certain amount of drive and dedication. It does take a desire to do this right. Still today, as I heard very early in my career, the mantra I often hear, the very lazy mantra I hear is, we don't design for those people. I don't like that one. Yes?
As a non-design person, a civilian, still working and active, and don't know how I got to be 62, what should I be looking for in planning in case I can't? In case the things I don't think will happen do happen?
It's interesting. I'm rather surprised that so many people, particularly if they choose to move to a house after they've raised their family and they sell off the big house and they want to move to something else, a condo, something, where the kids can't stay again. I think Bill Cosby does a marvelous job of describing this, so if you want to hear more, go check out Bill. But I think what's interesting is when people bristle at the thought that you start pointing out universal features in housing that they should be requiring from a builder, or when they go house hunting, wide doors, just in case you need a walker or a wheelchair to move about, not having steps. After universality, we're looking for yet another sexy term to get people moving, and we chose visitability. Ooh, I love that one. It just really sings. We're very good at bad branding. But visitability spoke to the sensibility that even if you weren't using a wheelchair, did you necessarily want to tell a guest at Thanksgiving that, oh, sorry, you can't come in, or George will carry you. Leave the chair in the carport. Because our house wasn't designed for this chair to fit. So visitability is a new standard of universality. It says there has to be at least one entry and exit point where wheeled conveyances can make their way in and out, and one bathroom that's accessible by wheels. Now, health safety services, the firefighters, the ambulance folks, the guys who are moving your baby grand like that rule. But the first city to pass this as a housing law, standard code, one of those words, was Tucson, Arizona. And immediately the Home Builders Association hired lawyers to fight it. I don't understand. And then I also have images of cutting off dangly bits so that people will just do the right things. And it's going to happen yet. Stay tuned. So why we've decided to prejudice ourselves by saying, oh, I'm not going to live in nasty housing for those people. Well, it's the ugly grab bar by the toilet. It's an absurdity. It's the Marquis de Sade choices I showed you momentarily. We need design for those options. We need bathing facilities we can use whatever our ability level. And we don't want the stigma of something that looks like it was deliberately put in play for a patient or someone who's broken. There's nothing wrong with you. There's everything right with you. And so all these features have to be reinvented, reinvestigated, relooked at, and we've been very slow to move on that because we've been so prosthetic in our approach. So shop for things that fit you and demand them. And be vocal. Something tells me that's not a problem.
Sure. Yes. Can you talk a bit about marketing and our basic language and how that promotes ageism?
Well, again, if in fact we do a positioning like I've fallen and I can't get up, which has reinvented itself, I'm really quite shocked to see these ads come back. Every late night comedian made it part of their monologue. People laugh their heads off, and I can tell you, having had loved ones who have fallen and couldn't get up and were found much later than they should have because they lived alone, it is irresponsible for us to position goods and services under the title of humor or in such bad taste that people find it humorous because of their discomfort, that they laugh at the situation instead of saying, oh goodness, I should ring up that company and make sure my mom has one of those instant alert features in her life. What people do is what I think we were just speaking about. They say, oh, well, that's not for me. I don't need that yet. And they go on their merry way until there's an emergency, and then it's too late. So what we do have to do is recognize the sensibility and the sensitivity in saying to someone, what if? What about? Remember the Marine that I described to you. Do we want to say to him, well, you're disabled, so let's see, what have we got for you? No. This is somebody who wants to be married, he wants to have a child, he wants to have a job, he wants to have a home. He just doesn't have a body that looks like the body he once had. And all of us are living in a shell that's going to age in its own distinct way and sometimes give us fits and sometimes work as we intended. But what we each need is the means by which we can maintain those choices in our daily lives. And anything that sings to that message is doing the right thing. The VW ad on Super Bowl Sunday was a surprise hit, and it wasn't intended to do what it did. And when Stevie Wonder ended out with Tracy Morgan, is that the comedian from 30 Rock? Thank you. When Tracy Morgan was aghast at how Stevie Wonder knew that it was time to punch Buggy or whatever, oh God. Anyhow, I hated that commercial up to that moment, but then when I saw that, I was just delighted because it didn't say, hi, I'm Stevie Wonder, blind guy who can't see things, but I'm Stevie Wonder who just punched Tracy Morgan because I knew that this VW product went by. And it's a silly little thing, it's a little slice of life, it's a little piece, but it has a way of reinforcing for us all that it really doesn't matter how someone sees, as long as they see. We were talking earlier today about the Star Trek and the Next Generation. You know, you don't see anyone go on board a starship and see the guy wearing the visor and say, oh, you're blind. Isn't that nice you have a job? He's a guy doing a job. And we don't, in that world, call people out unless they're a Klingon. So that's where we have to get. We have to normalize, and we aren't talking about a homogeneity, but rather an appreciation of each individual need. I also thought, staying with Super Bowl Sunday, because maybe these ads are in our minds, and here's what's interesting, because I can't remember the name of the group, but it's about labels, and the woman was wheeling through the office setting and pointing to this one and that one and talking about all their different personality disorders. But the whole message was quite holistic and quite well done, that you don't want to name call anybody. What you want is a job. So go back to the 30 Super Bowl clips, and I'm sorry, you'll have to do some digging for that one. So when we message with sensitivity, when we brand without excluding anybody, and when we stay on point, we're doing our best work, and we have a lot of work to do. The language has to be very specific. We don't work on behalf of the elderly. That's a medical diagnostic. We work on behalf of our elders. There are older people and younger people. There are not young and old people. There are no disabled people. There are people with ability levels that need to be met, and on and on. So we have some remedial work to do. And just as it's been hard to get out of some of the racism in our culture, this too is going to take some time. Thank you.